All right. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for joining us all here today. Today's shiur should be Le'ilu Nishmas, our dear friend Menachem ben Yisrael Yaakov, as well as my dear aunt Rivka Bas Gabriel Tzvi, and for Zaidi, Reb Shmuel ben Yosef Dov HaKohen, and B'schos L'Refuah Shalema Bekarov Mishalem ben Sarachel, Miriam Basara, and Yair Yeshia ben Chaya Atara. Today, we are on page 300 in the Or Avigdor for those who are following along. And yesterday we started talking about Bitachon when it comes to interpersonal mitzvahs. And those interpersonal mitzvahs are those where we are required or we really need another individual in order to fulfill that mitzvah. So we gave a bunch of examples yesterday, but one of them is, for instance, like tzedakah, right? You cannot give charity if there isn't someone to give charity to. You cannot do the mitzvah Bitachon if there isn't someone sick that you know to go and visit. And so interpersonal mitzvahs are those mitzvahs that affect other individuals, whereas the chapter before was mitzvahs that affect only you alone. Mitzvahs or aveiros that only affect you, whether you do them or you don't do them, and only you get schar, you get the credit, or you get reprimanded from Hashem by it. Now, when it comes to doing these kind of mitzvahs, we started talking about the understanding that we have to develop the attitude in when we do them, are we doing them for the mitzvah? Are we doing them to gain recognition? And Rabbi Victor Miller says that a person, he says over here, it's very important to realize that what Rav Av is telling us here is to work towards the goal of doing it solely for the mitzvah. Now, Rav Av understands that it's not so easily said and done, because very often we do like recognition. But Rav Av says there's a Gemara in Nazir that says that a person should always engage in Torah and mitzvahs, even if he does it for an ulterior motive, even if he does it because he wants to get kavod, even if he does it because he wants a favor from another person. Why? Because eventually, if you do it long enough, if you do it often enough, what's going to happen is you're going to start doing it for the mitzvah and the mitzvah alone. And that's why we see in life that when we try to encourage other people, especially young children, we do so, we say, hey, if you are good, if you learn, if you do your chores, I'll give you a treat, I'll buy you a prize. All those different kinds of ways of encouraging them with tangible items, not with, oh, if you do this, you're going to get schar and alam haba. Yeah, we teach our children that as well. We teach the adults that as well. But we start off, especially in younger years, to teach our children ways of doing good with a reward. And the reason for that is, should we get into that mode? We should get into that understanding of like, we just want to do good things. And eventually we get more mature and we realize that we're supposed to be doing this not for an ulterior motive, but more for the idea that we're doing this for Hashem and for schar and olam haba. So really what Rabbi Victor Miller is saying over here is, even though the idea of doing interpersonal mitzvahs is to do it solely for the sole fact that you should not look for credit from other people, and that the reason for doing it is so that you gain the mitzvah, is even if you're not there yet. And even more than that, let's say you know someone who's giving tzedakah because he wants his name, he wants the kavod, right? He wants his name on the building. Give it to him. Give him that kavod. Give him that recognition, because at the end of the day, he's still doing a mitzvah. And that is not to take away from the person. It's not like he gets an aveir because he's looking for recognition. So if there is someone out there that's looking for that recognition, give it to them. Because you know why? When you give it to them, he'll give more. Let him give more at the end of the day. So that's the overall point over here. But now he goes on to, from the mindset of it, from understanding that conceptual part that we want to do it for the mitzvah, now let's go on to doing the actual mitzvah. It says, V'achakach, after you've decided to go ahead and do a mitzvah, right? Yiftach elokim b'shlomas hamasa shekiven la'soyse mehem. He should put his trust in Hashem to provide the opportunity for the fulfillment of what he intended to do. So there are people out there, most of us actually just take a mitzvah, we hear something in need, and we go ahead and do it. Then there are people that might start an organization or might just for themselves they have a certain kind of category of mitzvah they really like to do, right? Maybe it's, some people like to do achras skala, right? So achras skala is a big thing. People, they actively look for opportunities to be able to provide for a poor kala for the wedding. And What he's saying over here is, you decide to do a mitzvah, right? Carrying out the mitzvah, getting that opportunity to do it, that's what you need to have a lot of Bitachon on Hashem, because it goes back to the basic rule. Basic rule is that we could want to do things from today to tomorrow, but at the end of the day, if Hashem doesn't present an opportunity to you, you're not going to have it. You're not going to be able to perform that mitzvah of Achmasas Kala or Tzedakah or Bitachon, whatever that is that you're after. And so we need to have Bitachon that Hashem is going to provide us that opportunity to fulfill a mitzvah that we're looking to fulfill. According to whatever Hashem wishes to happen after he makes his attempt. And that's the important last word, the attempt. We know the word Hishtadlus, and we associate the word Hishtadlus with work, because we know that good baal Bitachon is, we can't just trust in Hashem that he's going to make it rain from Shamayim. He'll make it rain when you go and do an action. So we know we have to do Hishtadlus, go to work, go get a job, or start a business, whatever it is, start doing that. Same thing is by a mitzvah. If you want to do a mitzvah, you want to do tzedakah, you're a multimillionaire, I want to give so much money to tzedakah, it's very nice. But if you're not out there actively trying to give it out, or some way advertising that you have a gemach that lends or gives money, then you're not doing any kind of action, you're not doing your Hishtadlus portion of the mitzvah. And what the important part Rav Av says over here is the attempt. Chovas Av says, after you've decided to do good, and you kifi masha who writes about mimena achashi sabarlov, after he makes his attempt, you need to do your attempt. You need to tell people, hey, I'm looking for a poor kala, a poor chasaka, I want to pay for the wedding. You have to actively look for those opportunities. If you go to a business, for instance, you start a company, and there's two ways of getting business. There's word of mouth, and then there's the advertising, there's marketing. So it kind of, over here, when it comes to a mitzvah, there's the marketing portion, which is you proactively going out to trying to find an opportunity. But we all know in business that business also comes from word of mouth. That it might come from, not from a specific marketing effort, just for the sole fact that you're in business in a specific area, someone might Google your name or word of mouth, ask around, and they'll find you. That doesn't come from an Hishtadlus portion, right? That comes from Hashem sending you that business. We call it word of mouth. It's a great word. I call it cause and effect. Hashem calls it his system. Whatever it is, you have the marketing portion, which is your Hishtadlus, and then there's the other ways how business comes through, which is not directly correlated with that marketing effort, with the newspaper ad or the SEO program that you put together. So same thing is by a mitzvah. You are proactively going out there and you're doing your attempt to get the mitzvah done. Now, you might not find anything, but you come home at night, someone might call and say, hey, I know someone who needs help with a wedding, I'm collecting for whatever. And those are coming in through the word of mouth, not through the SEO efforts that you put out there on the internet. And that is what the idea over here is that you need to have the Hishtadlus. You have to put the attempt into doing your mitzvah. And finally, before we conclude today, there's a very important part of doing mitzvahs, and it's called avoiding publicity. And avoiding publicity really breaks down to one simple rule. If you're doing a mitzvah for the sake of the mitzvah, not looking for the recognition, then you need to do everything in your power to make sure that you are not publicly displaying this mitzvah. So if you do a nice mitzvah, Bitachon, don't go, hey, you know who I visited in the hospital today? Oh, you know what I did yesterday? I spent 4 hours in NYU visiting people. That's called being publicly, out there. So if you went to the hospital yesterday for 4 hours to visit people, okay, cool, keep it to yourself. Now, the important part of that is, and why it's so cool to keep it to yourself, is as follows. He should try with all his ability to conceal all his activity from anyone who doesn't need to know. So if someone doesn't need to be involved in you carrying out that mitzvah, don't tell people. For when it is concealed, the reward for that mitzvah is so much greater than when you let people know about it. From what it would be if everyone else would know. There's a Gemara in Bava Basra that says the Gemara says that when a person gives tzedakah secretly, he is considered greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, I'm not sure exactly what it means, greater than Moshe Rabbeinu, but it's very clear from that Gemara in Bava Basra that when you try to do as much as you can to keep that mitzvah secret, it is an absolutely massive, massive mitzvah that you're doing. And you get so much more schar. And if you cannot hide it, and as a result receives honor and acclaim for his good deeds, he should remember the principle stated above. What's that principle? That neither the benefit nor harm comes from people, except for the Hashem's permission. What is this piece that he says to remember? If you're someone who really doesn't want the recognition, you really want to do it for the sake of the mitzvah. Now, unfortunately for you, there is going to be very often, or maybe sometimes, or maybe less, people are going to find out who did that mitzvah, who helped, who did this, try to do it secretly like Robin Hood in the dark with a hood, but people are going to find out who you are, and they might say, oh, and they might come over to you, say thank you. They might, the rabbi in the shul might call you out and say, oh, thank you so much to so-and-so for doing this and this, even though he wasn't looking for it. So he's saying is, if you are that person who's trying to keep it a secret, you don't want people to know about it, but it gets out there, remember one thing. And if you remember this one thing, even when people are giving you this credit, nothing in this world can happen without the decree of Hashem, which means you're admitting that I was just a shaliach. I did it. I was a shaliach at that moment. Hashem gave me this opportunity to carry out the mitzvah. But this would have happened regardless. Maybe not through me. It would have happened through someone else. But I chose to do the mitzvah. I got that schar. It got out there. I tried as much as I can to keep it a secret. And remember, try to keep those mitzvahs a secret. Don't go out in the public. I'm going to go more into that in the 7 levels of a mitzvah. But the bottom line over here is you have to have the right mindset first. Mindset is do it the mitzvah for the actual mitzvah, not for any kind of ulterior motive that comes with it. Secondly, when you go into doing the mitzvah, do your Hishtadlus and do it properly. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. Go find something else to do. That's okay. But if you're really planning on doing it, don't say, oh, I have Bitachon, it's going to happen, even though I'm not doing it. Just like your job. You can't have Bitachon that you're going to get, you're going to make a paycheck and not go to work. You need to still do your Hishtadlus. So that second part is your Hishtadlus, your attempt. Chavos says over here, do your attempt to make sure that happens. And the third thing that we learned over here is that avoiding publicity, that at the end of the day, be an unov when it comes to these things. Be quiet about what you do in the world for mitzvahs. Don't let everyone know. And he says over here, if it's on a need to know basis. If you need to employ someone else to help you get that mitzvah done, maybe it requires 2 or more people to get that mitzvah done. Maybe you're trying to get a bunch of people together to maybe to put together a fund for a certain issue. Whatever that is, keep it in your circle. It's on a need to know basis. And as little as people as you know as little as people as need to know about it, the bigger the schar is. At the end of the day, if no one knows about it, it's going to be the biggest schar you can get in Olam Haba. Like the Gemara in Barabasa said, you're greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. Whatever that really, really means. Maybe you really are greater than Moshe Rabbeinu. I don't know. But at the end of the day, we do understand from that Gemara that it's a huge, huge schar in order to keep it a secret. Thank you, everyone, for joining us all here today. And as always, I love you all.